Amanda, and this is my Texas Zone 8 garden, and today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to starting a cut flower garden. All right, so cut flower gardening is my main focus for gardening in my backyard, side yard, and front yard. I grow cut flowers in all aspects of my garden plot area. And I got into cut flowers because I used to be a florist, and basically I would design proposals for clients for weddings and all the big beautiful wedding installations. I love doing all of that, but it really kind of grew my love of flowers. And a few years ago during the pandemic, I decided to start working on growing more cut flowers that I could cut and bring inside for my home. I do not grow cut flowers to sell. I grow them purely for my own joy and peace. I love bringing them into my home, and I love giving them away to family and friends. And so the way I grow cut flowers is not on a massive scale. The way I grow cut flowers is for the average home owner, someone who, might not have tons and tons of land, doesn't have like a massive budget, but really wants to create something beautiful and peaceful to bring into their lives. So basically, a cut flower is a flower that is grown for the purpose of cutting and bringing inside for either your own enjoyment, and then some people sell them or give them away or whatever. So that is basically what a cut flower is. Not all flowers are cut flowers, only some are cut flowers. For a cut flower, we're looking for something with some longer stems. We're looking for something that has a longer vase life, meaning it will live longer than about 5 to 6 days. That's my minimum for cut flowers, and longer than about 5 to 6 days in a vase. There are a lot of different aspects that are really important about cut flower gardening, but since it's the beginning of 2024, I really want to just go over 5 basic tips or starting points for starting your own cut flower garden. Now, if you're someone who already grows cut flowers, I would still pay attention to all these tips because it might be something that you haven't considered in the past. All right, tip number 1 is understanding your environment and your climate. This is probably the most important thing you can do for yourself when starting any type of garden, not just a cut flower garden. First thing you want to do is you want to look at the website below, and you want to type in your zip code and figure out what your particular growing zone is. Now, this one is for the US area. Obviously, if you're in a different country or portion of the world, then go ahead and Google it online and find out what your particular growing zone is. My growing zone is zone 8. Sometimes, well, it used to be zone 8A. Now they say it's zone 8B. I'm going to go with just zone 8 for now. But basically, the zone, it kind of designates how hot and how cool you get in your particular areas, and it makes it easier for seed selection and plant selection in the future. Diet Dr. Pepper break. Okay, so once you've established your particular growing zone, you also need to look at whatever area you're going to be locating these cut flowers. You can grow them in a raised bed garden, and I do grow quite a bit in a raised bed garden. You can grow them in a designated garden bed. You can grow them in just little spots throughout your garden. Like, you don't have to grow one massive amount in one location. You can just locate little areas that you want to tuck in some seeds or a particular cut flower garden plant. And you can even grow cut flowers in containers. There is a wide variety of ways that you can grow cut flowers. Now, the next most important thing is determining the amount of sunlight. Most cut flowers, like literally 85%, are going to need minimum 6 to 8 hours of full-on sun. So that's something you want to consider when you're looking at your space and trying to determine where to locate these cut flowers. So how do I determine that? Basically, you just want to go out to your area. You want to look maybe about, midday and look all around. And if there's no shade cast in a particular area at midday, most likely you're going to get at least minimum 6 hours in that area. Now, some cut flowers need longer than 6 hours. It really just kind of depends on the variety, but a lot of the varieties we're going to discuss today are a really good basic starter point for flowers. Now, full sun versus light shade is still very different. I highly suggest if you're starting a cut flower garden that you start with full sun. And then once you learn a little bit more about your property and your gardening area, then you can start to check out areas that might have light shade or even a little bit deeper shade, although there's not a ton of cut flowers for deeper shade areas. Okay, so what do we do next? Now we've determined an area where we actually want to plant our cut flowers. Let's talk about the type of soil and the soil prep you're going to need in those areas. In those areas, whether you're starting seed or whether you're planting a brand new fully grown plant, you want to go ahead and make sure that the soil is not compacted. And when I say not compacted, I mean taking, a spade or some kind of gardening tool like a gardening fork or your hori-hori knife or something, digging in and loosening up and aerating the soil. We don't want a tight compacted soil. Now, if you're in my area, most likely you're going to discover clay. I typically like to dig out some of the clay. I don't dig all of it out because clay actually has quite a bit of nutrients locked within it. I usually dig out like a big old clump of clay when I'm starting on planting a brand new plant. And that just makes my process of breaking down the clay a little bit easier. No matter where you're planting, you're going to want to make sure you have plenty of compost mixed into your soil because all cut flowers tend to be heavy feeders, meaning they're going to want nutrients and fertilizer throughout their entire growing season. And compost is a really great way to start with it and not have to worry about it throughout the rest of the gardening season. If you're just going to go directly into your earth, you are going to probably want to apply some kind of fertilizer, just a granulated fertilizer at the very beginning. I choose plant tone because that's readily available in my area. Or you can go ahead and use a liquid fertilizer and apply that every 2 to 4 weeks throughout the growing season. So now we understand our zone and the location we're putting our flowers, and now we've added compost to our soil to make sure we have plenty of nutrients and we've aerated that area. Also, just in that back part of soil preparation, you also want to make sure that you have stakes if needed, or netting if needed, because a lot of cut flowers go really, really tall and they need support so they fall over. That is a simple solution that you can do right at the beginning, or you can do it later, or you can never do it like me. So I try to plant my flowers really close together so they support each other. That's probably not the best way, but it's what works for me. I find the netting and stakes fussy. I don't know why. I know they're not fussy. I know they're easy to put together, but I just don't do it. So, but you work with whatever works best for you. So next, let's talk about water needs. So this is number 3 on our list. We need to know what our cut flowers are going to need for water throughout the growing season. Now, most people will most likely hand water your cut flowers, and that's fine. I highly suggest that if you are hand watering your cut flowers that you water them at the base of the plant. Don't water from above, especially when you're growing cut flowers. When cut flowers come into contact with water above from a hose, it can cause discoloration, it can cause fungus, it can cause all kinds of issues throughout your cut flowers. And since we're growing these specifically with the purpose of cutting and bringing them in, we want the blooms to be as beautiful as possible. So if you are hand watering, make sure you just water at the base of the plant. For myself, for watering, I use a drip irrigation system. And a drip irrigation system is so much easier to put together than you think, and it doesn't have to be crazy expensive. I'm actually going to drop a video link down in the video description of me setting up a drip irrigation system so you can see how easy the process is. Drip irrigation allows me to water right at the base of the plant with just the amount of water that the plant needs, and it kind of takes away any kind of wasteful water use, which is great. And it's really helpful in a climate like mine where we typically have 60+ days of triple degree heat, and we will go a 60 to 90 day drought during the summer. So drip irrigation really kind of meets all those needs for my plants. For cut flowers, it's also really important to water as early as you can at the beginning of the day. This just allows the plants to kind of suck up the water during the coolest part of the day, and then it just kind of sets them up for success later on in the afternoon. And you definitely want your plants to be well watered as you're going into the heat of the day. Now, even in my area, even in the heat of the day, even if they're well watered, typically you will see a little bit of wilting from about 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and when it's really, really hot during the summer. But they'll perk up overnight and be ready to go in the morning. Okay, and so next we're going to talk about selecting the seeds or flowers that we want to start within our garden. If you're new to cut flower gardening, I highly suggest starting simple and starting easy. My big go-to seeds are going to be zinnias, sunflowers, cosmos, and then something like larkspur or bachelor's buttons. And that kind of hits some different times of the year, spring into summer into fall. But those are some really good starter flowers that you can grow from seeds that you'll most likely have some really great success with right in the beginning. And I do think when you're starting a cut flower garden or any new garden, it's really good to set yourself up for some success in the beginning, because truthfully, gardening can be really daunting, especially when you spend all this time and all this money and then nothing grows. So those are the ones I would definitely start with if you're new to cut flower gardening. Now, if you're a little bit ambitious and you want to get into a wider variety of seeds, I will be showing a bunch of videos throughout January where I start a lot of seeds inside. I'll be doing some direct sowing outside as we get closer to spring, and I have tons of a backlog of videos for you to watch where I am starting cut flowers throughout the garden, tons of varieties, all beautiful, and they've been really fun to grow. Now, you might not want to start from seed, and that's totally fine. You can absolutely start with full-grown plants. Now, those are going to tend to be a little bit pricier and perhaps a little bit harder to locate, as a lot of nurseries don't actually provide or sell plants that are specifically for cut flowers. So you might have to do a little research in locating that. Typically, if I'm looking for a plant that's a cut flower, I'm going to stick to some of my main nurseries that I love. That includes Covington's in my area, homegrown plants, and Callaway's tends to have some as well. I highly suggest if you're looking for cut flowers that you find a local garden center. I would stay away from the big box the big box stores, as they don't typically have a lot of cut flower plants for sale. Now, once you've kind of figured out, hey, I want these seeds or I want these flowers and plants, once you kind of figured out what you want, then we can go back to your space. So you think about the space that you located, whether it's a raised bed, whether it's tucked into your garden in different places, or whether it's in containers. And now we're going to look at how to lay out these flowers. Now, if you're working in a traditional raised bed situation, you're really going to want to locate where the sun is going to go throughout the day. So if we pretend that this right here is my raised bed, right? And I've got my sun going this direction. All right. So what we're really going to want to do is we're going to make sure that we want to plant shorter varieties towards the front, towards the rising sun, and the taller varieties towards the setting sun. So I would want to, concentrate something like, trying to think of some lower ones, maybe a shorter variety of zinnias towards the left, and towards the right is probably where I would grow my sunflowers, because those tend to be much taller. What you really don't want to do with cut flowers is, if this is your garden bed right here, we really don't want to plant a short variety of flowers in the middle. And that's because as the sun comes up, this is still in shade, now it gets sun, then it goes back into shade, It's not going to get its full 6 hours of sun if it's a short variety right in the center of your raised bed with taller varieties on each side. So no matter what you decide to do, make sure you have shorter to one side and then let it grow to taller on the other, so that we know that we can get as maximum amount of sun hours as possible. Now, if you are tucking cut flowers into your existing garden beds, into a traditional garden beds, it's the same situation. You wouldn't want to take sunflowers and put them all the way up at the front of a garden bed, because sunflowers can grow like minimum 4 feet, and some of them grow 8 to 10 feet. And so you want to make sure that if you're doing something like that with the sunflowers, that you're tucking them back further into your garden, so that they're not blocking or creating shade for any of the plants or flowers behind them. And then if you're growing your cut flowers in containers, that actually might make your life really easy, because you can move these containers into different areas to guarantee that your plants are going to get maximum amount of sun as possible. If you're growing flowers in containers or cut flowers in containers, I highly suggest you stick to one variety in each container. It's just a little bit easier to control the growth situation and the water situation if you're focusing on one variety per container. If you're working on your layout and you're still unsure, I highly suggest just sketching it out. Drawing out a grid where it is, or drawing out the beautiful slopes of your garden. Even if you don't think you're an artist, that's fine. You can draw some simple lines and put an X where you're going to put your flowers. And it sounds simple and like, oh, maybe I don't need to do that. Taking the time to draw out a flower bed plan, it's going to make your life so much easier. So you can draw it out, you can put a little bush, draw a little bush wherever your existing shrubs are, and then locate the areas where you can actually tuck in some different flowers. And then for the raised bed, I suggest for the raised bed, you just kind of divide it out in a grid and then locate where you want to put each variety of flower. Okay, so those are my 5 basic tips for starting a cut flower garden. So we started with understanding your climate and environment, figuring out your zone, figuring out where you're going to have full sun, and then deciding if you're going to be in a raised bed, tucked within your garden, or a container. Secondly, we're going to prep soil. So we want to loosen the soil so that it's not compacted. It has nice fluffy soil. And then we're going to add compost mixed throughout our soil to add a lot of nutrients throughout the entire growing season. We're also going to plan for any stakes or netting that we might need if we're growing really tall cut flowers. I also highly suggest that if you're in an area where it's really windy. So like if you have land and there's no trees or anything to block wind, you're going to need some netting and staking. I work within my backyard where I have fencing up, and so the wind isn't as much of an issue as it might be for other people because I have a smaller protected area. The next thing is our water needs. Whether you're deciding you're going to hand water or whether you're going to do a drip irrigation setup, you want to make sure you're watering from the base of the plant, not overhead, but watering at the base of the plant, and that we're watering earlier in the day. Water needs for specific plants is going to differ. So I'm not going to suggest a certain amount of times that you water throughout the year. I do want to say that watering the same throughout the year is not a real thing. So your watering schedule should adjust with the changing of the seasons. Obviously, less water when we're getting a lot of rain, more water if you're in a drought kind of situation. Number 4, we're going to decide what we want to grow, whether we're going to grow seeds or whether we're going to grow full-grown plants, whatever works best for you. If you're a beginner, make sure you start with the easy varieties that I suggested. That was zinnias, cosmos, some sunflowers, larkspur, I think there was another one, bachelor's buttons. Just starting with some easy varieties that you have a lot of success with. These are all grown from seed, in my opinion. They're cheap to start off with, and you have a lot of success in the beginning, which will only fuel your passion for cut flowers. Figuring out your layout from shortest to tallest and making sure that nothing is getting cast in too much shade and that all flowers are getting a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of full sun every day. I think I did them out of order. It's fine. I love growing cut flowers. I cannot tell you the joy that I get from growing cut flowers, the peace I find. I like the way it keeps my brain busy and gives me a focus outside of away from the external world. I can just walk in my garden and do my own thing. So whether you are gardening on a balcony, whether you're gardening in a small suburban cookie cutter house like my house, whether you have tons of land and space, whether you have unlimited resources, there is gardening for everybody. So don't be daunted when you see these big elaborate setups. Everybody started somewhere, so that's something to think about. Everybody started simpler than you might think. I literally started with a baby on my hip and a couple of containers that I tucked some zinnias in years and years ago. That's how I started gardening. I fell in love with those zinnia seeds and the beautiful flowers that it produced, and from there it just fueled my passion. And I've just continued to go and go and go and experiment and try different things. And I think that's something to really kind of keep in mind as a cut flower gardener or any type of gardener. You're going to have wonderful successes and you're gonna have epic failures, and that's okay. That's okay. It's part of the gardening process. The best gardeners, I think, have killed the most things, have killed the most plants because they're willing to take the risk. They're willing to try something out. And if it's a failure, they've learned a whole lot from that failure that they can apply for future successes. So I think that's really important to learn. I hear a lot of people are like, I'm not a gardener, I have a black thumb. You might end up being one of the world's best gardeners with a black thumb. People with a black thumb, I'm all like, you've already started learning so much already. So killing plants dying, failures are part of the process for gardening. It makes the successes all the more sweeter. And I can guarantee you, if you decide to start a cut flower garden in 2024, when you bring in that first bundle of flowers to your home, you're going to feel amazing. And you are going to find that you have found a hobby for a lifetime. All right, you all, I hope you enjoyed today's video going over my 5 tips for starting a cut flower garden in 2024. Go for it. Do it. Talk to me about, in the comments, drop down in the comments, talk to me about your favorite cut flower to grow. Mine is zinnias. I know that that's just the generic one that everybody says, but they're a gateway drug for cut flowers. Growing zinnias is so epically wonderful. You can grow such a beautiful variety of blooms, and they're just so hardy and they're wonderful to work with. So that is my favorite flower to start off with for cut flower gardening. You talk to me what your current cut flower garden cut flowers. You talk to me about what your favorite cut flowers are in the comments below. Share with others the ones that you've had great success with. I can't wait to check them out. All right, you all, as always, I'm asking for you to subscribe to my channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you know when videos come out. Make sure you hit the little bell beside it so that they send you a notification when my latest video is up. And give me a like, a thumbs up on this video. I get thousands and thousands of views, but very few people actually hit the thumbs up. So make sure you hit that thumbs up and drop me a comment below. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you. If you want to continue learning more about She's a Mad Gardener and myself, you can check me out on all of my social media aspects, including Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, she's a mad gardener or decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.